how much you love the Lord, but how little you trust the Lord. If it's not making money, I can't spend time on it.
And you're like, do I go back to working 50, 60 hours a week?
Instead of my morning prayer time, I'm scrolling Indeed. Seventh day isn't meant to stress about day one of next week. That's already taken care of. It's so easy to say that, but like, dude, when your seventh day feels like it's lasting a long time. We got to a point in our life where we had put our house up for sale. I think what I've been really bad about is, God, this is what I'm doing. Will you bless it? Instead of God, tell me what to do. Because if you'll just do what God told you to do, you don't have to ask him to bless it. I don't just want this to work for our family. I want this to work for our family, like here with you guys online.
God really does provide every day for us.
Well, welcome back to another episode of the Broom Tree Podcast. My name is Eric, and I have my lovely wife, Amanda, here with me today. And it's been a minute, y'all. It's been a minute since we've gotten to sit down and talk with our Broom Tree family, and I'm sorry for that. In today's episode, we're going to talk about kind of what's been going on in our lives, what's been going on with the podcast, and hopefully maybe share a little bit of insight into what it's like to be a Christian that sometimes doubts. Sometimes doubts themselves, doubts the Lord, doubts the provision, and fear. You let fear, anxiety, all of those things take over. And so I wrote the title of this episode as I was writing these notes out. I wrote down, "It's just not working," and that's how I feel. That's how I feel about my life right now. In almost any area you could think of, it's just not working. And so I hope that as you're listening to this today, you feel encouraged that maybe you find yourself in seasons sometimes where you're like, man, I feel like life is just not working for me right now. Like everything's going against me. That's me. And that's been me for the last, 4 months now, 4.5 months since we recorded. We pre-recorded a lot to get us through the holidays because we knew we would be busy. Yeah. And then coming into January, it felt like everything that could have gone wrong started going wrong. In my perspective. Yeah. And I allowed fear and anxiety to take over. And the first thing I did was drop a passion to pursue false security and something else. And we'll talk about all that in a minute. But it's just not working. So if you're listening to today's episode and you're like, it's just not working, what's that about? Life. Sometimes life just feels like it's not working for us. But a lot's been going on. So like I said, we pre-recorded a lot. So we've been putting out still a little bit of content, but not anywhere near as frequent as we were pre the beginning of the year.
And I think what's sad is it's not as consistent as we would want it to be. Yeah. Like we always strive to be consistent. Yeah. And I think people thrive in that as well. Yeah. And the fact that we were kind of just like, here's one episode. And then 3 weeks later, here's another one. Yeah. And we don't know when we're going to do another one. Yeah. Love you guys. See you later.
Yeah. And it feels so bad. I feel so guilty because I do love what we do here so much. And I love the community that's building online. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And even in person from our friends and family that we know or people that we run into. Like, I'm really enjoying that community. And that's why, like, it felt so heavy on my heart of, like, God was just like, when are you going to pick this back up again? Right. And we'll talk about all of that, about why we set it down and what we're doing to pick it back up and all of those different things. But a couple of things have happened over the last really 4 months, I would say, is about how long it's been since we've really sat down and recorded super fresh content. Yeah. It's been about 4 months. And the first big thing, if you can't tell already, we're having a baby. Yeah. You are, as we're filming today, you are 32 weeks?
I think I'm a little over 32 weeks.
A little over 32 weeks.
I can't remember.
And we're having a little boy. So our sweet daughter, Jo, is going to have a little brother to run around and play with. Mm-hmm. And we're super excited about that. Mm-hmm. But that, I think, was kind of the tipping point for me where the fear and anxiety really kicked it into overdrive of, how am I going to take care of 2 kids? I can barely keep up with my toddler right now. Financially, how am I going to afford paying for 2 of everything now, you know? And you're going to take some time off work when he's born.
How far along was I? I think I was like almost 12 weeks when we last filmed. Yep. So our dates are probably off a little bit. But if I look miserable, it's because I was.
You're in that first trimester. Yeah. And that was part of the struggle of filming was, you were just so sick for the first trimester.
Apparently it doesn't matter, girl, boy. I just get very, very sick in the first trimester.
And it's really hard when your co-host is just down and out.
Yeah.
And then we, like I said, we have a 2-year-old. And she was about almost 2 at the time.
Yeah.
And so you're navigating you being sick with a 2-year-old with Thanksgiving and Christmas and the holidays.
Yeah.
And it just felt like we tried several times to coordinate like filming days. And every time we would go, like the morning of, you were sick.
Yeah.
I was sick. Joe was sick. Babysitter fell through. Like something always, there was snow on the ground and people couldn't get out to our house. Like it just felt like there was always something.
Yeah.
And so, it just felt like, it felt like our rhythm kept getting messed up. And we'll talk about this in a minute. I was talking with a friend the other day, and it's so crazy when you really think about your life, when it feels like life's not working for you, how easy it is to snowball when you get out of rhythm.
Yes.
Because you can get yourself in a pretty healthy pace, and you can find yourself like things just become easier. And then the holidays always do it for a lot of people because it messes up your rhythm. And then you hit the ground running in January. And it still feels like maybe it's hard to get your feet underneath you if you don't get it right within the first few weeks of the year, right?
Yeah.
Because you give yourself the grace of like, oh, it's Thanksgiving, and then it's Christmas, and then it's New Year's. Oh, and it's cold, and it's whatever else. And next thing you know, it's Valentine's Day, and you're like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I haven't touched this since before Christmas, and now it's Valentine's Day. And you just find reason after reason to keep, at least for us, because you have the beginning of the year. And one of the things we'll talk about in a minute is your art business is blossoming right now and doing well now.
Yes.
But we built...
That took a lot of work.
At the same time that we were doing all those things through Thanksgiving and Christmas and everything, we were building in our backyard.
Yeah, they saw. That's where we last filmed.
That's where we filmed our last episode, was in the studio.
Yeah.
But we built that.
Yeah.
And particularly, the we became me because you got so sick.
Yeah.
And so most nights where we would have been recording or editing or promoing or whatever, you were inside throwing up, trying not to, sleep all day.
Yeah.
And I was out here hanging drywall and mudding and taping and painting. And
I remember when I did the mural in the studio, I think I threw up 16 times in the process of trying to paint it.
It was so brutal. And so all of those things, none of them were bad, but all of those things kind of got us out of our rhythm a little bit. And so we get through the holidays, we get your studios complete so you can start having classes in it in the beginning of January. Me and my dad are doing all the electrical work on Saturdays and Sundays when he's not at work. I'm trying to mud and paint and do all that after I get off my job.
Right.
And we put the toddler down for bed or like whatever, because I'm trying to hang out with her too.
Yeah.
And so all these things are just happening. At my job, there was a crazy turnover and people leaving and everything else. And so it just felt like one little thing after another, and your rhythm gets thrown off.
Yeah.
And when your rhythm gets thrown off, especially as parents or as if you're an adult who lives on your own or maybe in a relationship or whatever, the first thing you fall back on is what you could consider like non-essential. Because you're thinking, okay, I have to be a parent, I have to be a partner, and I have to go to work. And so by the time you get through those things, I'm like, okay, work, check, so that my bills are paid. Second, parent, so that my daughter's taken care of.
Yeah.
And then I lay my daughter down. It's like, okay, third, I got to be a husband. What can I do for my wife? And then I need to get her studio done. And by the time all that's done, it's 11 p.m.
Right.
And you're thinking about that 6 a.m. alarm, and you're like, okay, I'll touch the podcast next week, or I'll touch the dream that I have, the vision that I have for whatever business or hobby or side quests, whatever you've got going on in your life.
Yeah.
You're always like, I'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, it's been a week, 2 weeks, 6 weeks, a month, 2 months, and you're like, okay, now what?
Yeah.
And that's kind of where we found ourselves. Like I said, my job was just chaotic. Your job was growing because of the studio and everything else, but you're also trying not to die from being pregnant. And then we started serving, in the last bullet point I wrote, we started serving at our church more.
Yeah.
For our church family, a lot of them watch our podcast. When our church started, we realized very quickly that there was no one just sitting by the front door during service. In the crazy world we live in, I just dawned on me one day. I was like, I don't mind sitting by I can hear service from the front door.
Right.
So I just started sitting at the front door.
Yeah.
And then one day, a good friend of ours at church, she's been on the podcast before, Annie Fry, she came up to me and she was like, hey, why do you and your wife not sit together? Why do you and your wife not sit together during service anymore? And I was like, well, I didn't even think about it. Like, she'll sit out here in the lobby with me, but I'm just guarding the front door. And she was like, you want to take turns doing that? And I was like, sure. And then another guy, Mike, came up and started asking. And so we kind of developed this like routine that now we call it the safety team. But I say that for me justified the spiritual itch that this podcast used to be.
Yeah.
Where it was like, oh, I'm still doing something for the Lord. It's just instead of cultivating a ministry that I actually love. Not that I don't love that too, but you know what I'm saying?
Right,
Like
that you're
this
more
passion
passionate
that I
about.
have,
Yeah.
that's easier to just check off my list because it's 2 hours a week. I'm already going to be at church anyway. So then I can justify spiritually not touching.
And we can go ahead and be honest, that's more of your dad instincts than anything.
Yeah.
Of you didn't like that no one was what do you call it? The shield in between.
Yeah, the human shield is what we call them. But yeah, no, like that. And but I say, like, how easy is that to do though, right?
Yeah,
We
for
justify not doing the things that we should be doing. And so in preparation for our son and everything else going on, I decided it was important that I keep providing our family with this dream life, and I put dream in quotations. That I allowed myself to begin stressing too much about things that I couldn't really control. And I started reeling back in to put more effort into like, I'm going to hustle and grind to make more money.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to serve more at the church to, you know, feel better about my life. Or, you know what I mean? Like I started just trying to take control of everything. And when we started this podcast, when we started this journey, I remember I quit my big boy job, so to speak. And we just stepped out in faith that we were going to build this life of almost nomadic, like you're going to teach art and just try and grow an honest small business. I was going to try and grow this podcast and work part-time at this other thing to provide for our family. And we were just going to trust the Lord with the rest.
Right.
And all that sounded great until you told me you were pregnant.
Yeah.
And then I panicked.
Yeah.
As a husband and as a provider, I panicked. And I was like, well, now what do I need to do? I need to start doing all these side jobs and doing, you know, do I need to quit my part-time and go back full-time and just ditch you guys during the week? And like all these thoughts start running through my head. And immediately the first thing I did was like, okay, if it's not making money, I can't spend time on it.
Right.
And as much as I love this podcast, right now in the season we're in, it doesn't make money. Mm-hmm. So I was like, I've got to focus on the thing. And the only reason we did, like I said, the safety stuff at church is because we were already going to church anyway.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like even that was like, it kind of justified that piece of my heart of like, well, I'm still doing something for the Lord.
Yeah.
It's just, I'm really just sitting in the lobby, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I allowed that fear. And I think a lot of us do that. Everything, and it goes back to that rhythm, but like everything feels good until I get laid off.
Right.
And then immediately it's like, instead of my morning prayer time, I'm scrolling Indeed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or I'm scrolling LinkedIn, or you know what I'm saying?
Well, and I think that's where we saw the struggle a lot, was a lot of times when you're like, okay, I'm not going to do anything that's not making money, or, you know, you have to shift your priorities or whatever it might look like. You end up just not doing anything either way. So now you're not doing the podcast, but we're also not doing stuff that's making money either.
No,
and
exactly.
I think that took some time for us to look back and be like, oh, we were just enjoying the free time, but in the free time, all we were doing is stressing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just like, yeah, we got the time that we wanted, but we weren't utilizing the time very well either.
No, I think that's perfectly said, because that's what I felt like, was like I would lay, and by the time, you know, Joe's asleep, I'm off work, all like everything's quiet in the house, I found relaxation in just other things.
Yeah.
You know, watching
parents
TV.
Will be able to relate of like, you have all of these ideas of all the stuff you're going to get done during nap time and after bedtime. And then finally you get to that moment and you're like, I don't think I could move my body if I wanted to.
No, and it goes back, and I think so many people go like, well, I'm passionate about this thing, so I'd find room for it. But I think part of it is, it's okay to say I'm passionate about this thing, but I'm also passionate about other things.
Yeah.
And sometimes they conflict with each other.
Yeah.
You know, you talk about this all the time with like, you love your job, but you also love being with Joe.
Yeah.
And so when you're off work, you miss it. But then when you're at work, you miss being at home. And I think it's the same thing of like, I love this podcast, but when I'm stressed, sometimes playing video games is more relaxing than editing content.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's easier to just be like, okay, well, I'm not going to write an episode. I'm going to watch this show with my wife. And I'm going to justify it as like, oh, I'm spending time on my marriage. And really, we're just eating Sour Patch Kids, watching TV together.
Well, unfortunately, when things that you're passionate about, that you're like putting your time and energy into, aren't always relaxing. So like editing videos because you want them to be good quality videos is also kind of work and stress, even though you love it. Yeah. Just like my job, like I love everything to do with art. But because I want it to be successful and I want people to love it as much as I do, there comes the work aspect of it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I don't care about the TV shows that I'm watching and the video games that I'm playing.
Yeah.
That's why they're stress relievers or mindless, whatever.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think like you talked about with your art business, when it comes to like I'm passionate about this, I think everyone's passionate about something, but there's a reason most people don't ever do it or they don't ever stick with it. And part of that is the work piece of it that comes in. And I knew that starting a podcast would be a lot of work. And I still I love doing it. I remember I would talk your ear off like all the time. And then you would ask me like, so when are we doing that?
Right.
And I'm like, well, first let's get our money in order, or let's get a childcare, let's get childcare sorted out or whatever the thing is. And I know for me, I kind of got to a place where it just became easier I thought it would be easier to throw myself at something else.
Right.
And I found myself working more hours, just daydreaming about the podcast.
Yeah.
And so I knew that I was supposed to be doing it. I just allowed fear, doubt, anxiety to take over.
Yeah.
And I thought throwing myself at other things would fix that. Like, if I made more money, then I would be less stressed. And in less stress, I would have more energy and more mental capacity, more emotional capacity to pour into this. And I just found myself more exhausted.
Right.
And so
I was going to say, I don't know if you want to talk about this at all either, but I think they kind of coincide what we've already talked about of me being pregnant and you not really doing this as much is I don't know how much you want to talk about of you don't like to be uncomfortable. So you are not one to push yourself if it doesn't make sense or it just makes you uncomfortable. It just, you'd rather be doing something else. You much rather satisfy those, I don't know if that makes sense. But I tend to be the one who kind of comes alongside you and I'll push you. And when I'm pregnant and dying in the bathroom, that stopped a lot.
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking about this at all during that time. So therefore, I think that little annoying voice of mine in the back of your head sometimes of you should really be doing that. Or why are we just talking about it and not doing anything about it? Those conversations that we have a lot of the time stopped.
Yeah.
And I think with your natural, and you don't give into it a whole lot because that's how you are, but your natural flesh definitely is to just do, I think anybody's like that, to just do what you want to do over what you should be doing.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we have friends or family or spouses that come alongside us and push us. And I wasn't that. And that's my bad too. I definitely could have done better during that time.
Yeah, well, and I definitely think it's partially your fault too.
Yeah,
I would agree with that.
50, no. This is a marriage, baby. It's 50-50.
Yeah. But no, I agree, and I think that's but that goes back to excuses that we make for ourselves. And I think that's the heart of this, really, for people who are listening. Is you're not alone when you make excuses for yourself.
Yeah,
I'm the king of making excuses for myself, and what I found is in making those excuses, my life just got harder.
Yeah.
I just got more stressed, more miserable, more, out of place, it felt like. And the first thing I wanted to say, kind of recapping just where we've been and why things have been the way they've been, is I'm sorry. I really am. I'm ungrateful for the podcast that God has given me. Sometimes I allow myself to be envious of things that other people have. That I'm sure if the roles were flipped, we could all pick something in someone else's life and be envious of it. But for myself, when it comes to this podcast, I allowed insecurity and fear to put it on the back burner. And I'll share this a story here in a minute of a conversation I had with a friend a couple weeks ago that kind of really convicted me. But I'm sorry. We've had such a blessed season one, I guess you could say, first year of doing this. And I just walked away from it out of fear. And I think part of it is fear of provision, I think was a big one. I've got to go figure out how to make the dollars make sense in my budget every month. So I'm going to throw myself into work or side jobs or, you know what I mean? Anything you can think of to try and make ends meet. That was the first one. And then honestly, I think a big one for me on a personal level was it's like a two-part feeling. I'm struggling with exactly how to word it. It's like fear of failure, but also fear of like coming back.
Yeah.
Of like, it's like, I analogize it with like going to the gym. You're super consistent and then you miss like 2 or 3 weeks.
Right.
And then you know you need to go back, but then you're also just anxious about like, what do I say?
Yeah.
Because I want to walk in and they all haven't missed, like they haven't missed a beat.
Yeah.
But here I am. I know what's going on. Or you miss church, or
right.
You call out of work sick, and you know you weren't sick. And then you're like, you go back to work literally the next day and you don't have any remnants of being sick. You know what I mean? And you have that feeling of like, I'm going to see my boss. What are they going to say? Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'm sorry. And I'll own that. And I'll say that, doing this podcast is if not my favorite thing in our life, outside of like being married and parenting. I love it. I love it so much more than I love my day job.
Yeah.
I know you have a passion for art, which is kind of separate. But for me, and I struggled with saying this out loud for a long time, but like, I would love for this to be all I do.
Yeah.
And I think you try and play it cool and like, oh, if it works out, it's cool. If it doesn't work out, it's not cool, whatever. And I do that to give myself an out. If it doesn't work out, then I can be like, oh, I never really tried.
Yeah.
Instead of being like, no, I really want this. I don't just want this to work for our family.
Yeah.
I want this to work for our family, like here with you guys online. We have had, and I wrote some of this down. We have had so many people. We haven't recorded in 4 months. We've been posting, like I said, we recorded a lot earlier on, but we have had over 1,000 people just this year since we recorded last, either follow or subscribe or comment. We've had literally hundreds, if not close to 1,000 people comment. We've had people email, send DMs, just talking about how much the podcast has impacted their life from all the way back to like episodes 2 and 3 up to 14 and 15 that are the most recent ones. And like seeing those come in always like it relit that fire of like, oh man, like this is actually helping people. And then I go to sit down to write and it's like my mind is just blank and all I can think about is this baby on the way,
right?
And the budget and my calendar and my energy levels and like all these different things. Am I being a good husband? Am I being a good dad to the one I already have, to the next one that's coming along? Am I being a good friend to my friends in my life? And y'all have heard us talk about this in all of our previous episodes, but like that is so important to me.
Yeah.
To be a good friend and to be a good dad and to be a good husband. And I think it's important to a lot of people. That's not like a unique trait about Eric, but in doing so, I'm so quick to put down other things that I think are hindering that. And you know this about me. I'm always the last one to go to bed because I want to make sure everybody's taken care of. And then in that downtime, that me time afterwards is when I always tell myself like, then I'll invest into something else. And I never get around to it.
Well, I even remember the conversation that we had. Oh, I don't even remember. It was like, what, a month ago or something? And you were like, I know I need to do something with the podcast, but I'm just not, like, nothing's coming to me. Like, all these ideas of episodes and, like, guests that we've had have either, like, they've kind of just shown up, or you've had, like, a clear idea of where you wanted to go with it, and you're like, I just don't have any of that right now.
Yeah.
And I remember, I think we were outside, and I was like, well, I don't want to be super cliche about this, but have you, like, talked to God recently? And you were like, how dare you? That was your exact reaction. You're like, how dare you ever say something like that to me? No, but how dare you?
Yeah.
And I think after like that conversation and the conversations with like our friends and stuff like that, which God works through, helped you get that passion and those ideas back again.
Because it wasn't just a lack of passion for podcasting.
Yeah.
Because that I never had a lack of passion for it. It was a lack of discipline to put my priorities in order.
Yeah.
I think that's a better way of maybe wording it is we find out you're pregnant and immediately it was like all my priorities shifted.
Right.
And I went into like panic survival. I've got to make sure I've got enough for the next year.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if I told this with you, but I was even thinking about like, do I bulk buy groceries in case there's a recession? Like, do I get a second deep freezer? Like, I'm in full panic mode. If I've got to know we're going to make it for the next year to 2 years, because I've got all these people relying on me to make it happen.
Yeah.
And I never relied on the Lord to help me do that. I just went back to like, I'm gonna grind and make this happen.
And also what's like so funny, like looking back on it now, is like we obviously like we're like break even in our finances. Like we're not crazy like doing anything crazy with our finances or have like an excessive amount of income or anything right now.
Yeah.
I'm self-employed and
I'm a part-time payroll person.
Yeah. So like nothing crazy is happening. It honestly sometimes doesn't make sense how we break even or are positive every month, but we have not gone without every month, and we're just like
terrified.
It's not going to happen next month. I know it's not going to happen next month, you know.
Yeah.
And we just continue, and we did that when we first got married too, and we were just like, you know, that this isn't going to happen. That I just know, like the math ain't mathing right now.
Yeah.
And every month, every year went by, and it somehow worked, you know.
Yeah.
And even when we were making tons of money, we still stressed about money and still are stressed about our livelihood at that time, you know. So it's just so funny to like, and I'll do it tomorrow. I'll wake up tomorrow and I'll be stressed about it again. But I think it is like very evident looking back over our lives, like God really does provide every day for us.
Yeah. And I hope that other people I know that other people that I've talked to can relate to that. Cause that's, you brought up like how God uses our friends. And I wrote this story down. This was the story that I guess it was 2 or 3 weeks ago. I sat down with a good friend of mine. He's kind of like definitely my best friend, mentor. Like he's really helped us through a lot of seasons in our life. And I was just sharing with him, and I was like, same thing I shared with you. I was like, man, I feel like my mind's just blank. I feel like if I have any downtime, all I am is stressed. Like I'm having a hard time sleeping. When I pray, I feel like all I'm doing is asking for stuff and half-heartedly saying thank you for stuff, just waiting for him to come through with like a magical check or raise at work, or like, you know what I mean? Just something like that. And he told me, he was like, well, what are you doing spiritually? Like, where do you want to see yourself in 2 to 5 years? Like job-wise, spiritually, everything else. And I guess that was the first time I'd allowed myself to think beyond baby number 2 being born and like the first few months of his life. And without question, immediately I said, well, I would love to do the podcast. Like I would love for that to be where I spend most of my time and my energy. Right. And he was like, so what are you doing to make that happen? And I was like, well, I'm trying to get a better job so that I can, you know, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, so you're trying to work more somewhere else to make this other thing work. But what are you doing with the podcast? And I was like, nothing. I don't praying about it.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, that's cool. But like, when are we going to hit the record button and run an episode? And I was like, oh yeah, you know. And he told me, he said, and I was sharing with him, I showed him our analytics of our podcast for the last month. Yeah. And I wrote these down a couple of days ago. It's been mind-boggling to me that we haven't posted an episode in months. We haven't even posted a clip for, I think, as I'm recording today, I think 38 days since our last even clip has been uploaded on any platform. And in that 38 days, we've still had over 100,000 people come across, like whether it's a clip or a subscriber or a full episode, YouTube, the podcast, TikTok, Instagram, like whatever it is. All of that combined has been over 100,000 people. Yeah. And I didn't even check it for 3 or 4 weeks. Yeah. You know what I mean? And God was just stirring that. And so I know that the Holy Spirit's in this. Like I know that he's a part of what we're doing. Right. And I showed him that, and he was like, bro, why are you worried about this? And I was like, well, what if it doesn't work out? And he was like, it's already worked out. Mm-hmm. And I showed him, we got an email not too long ago from a lady who listened to Annie's episode on domestic violence and just talked about how it like gave her courage to step out and leave, you know, the relationship she was in. We had another lady reach out and say that she had been going back and forth about her relationship with the Lord. And then she came across our podcast and just so happened to come across our podcast the same weekend she got invited to a women's event and they preached on the same topic we spoke on. Yeah. And she was like, I'm so on fire for the Lord right now. And so I was showing him these things. And he's like, bro, what more does God have to do to show you that he wants you he wants you and your wife doing this? And it's one of those things like you don't hear it until you say it out loud to someone else.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm like, I just don't know if it's going to work out. And he was like, bro, it's already worked out. Yeah. Even if no one else knew joints, he was like, you have literally thousands of people every month who want to be like receive that ministry. And I was like, yeah, but there's this and that. And I started coming up with excuses. And he said, can I tell you, he gave me two pieces of advice that I thought were like mind blowing. The first thing he said, if you don't, God's clearly blessing what you're doing, but God's not going to waste his time either. If you don't run with it, don't be surprised if eventually he finds someone else who will.
Yeah.
And I was like,
damn.
Okay, don't really like that.
Yeah.
But I get what he's saying, and he's like, bro, what more confirmation? You literally haven't even touched this thing, and God has sent hundreds of people your way, and you haven't even tried.
Yeah.
There are people out there trying.
Yeah.
And no one's listening. And that's not to dig on them. That's just to say, like, look what God's doing for what we're trying to do. But then the second thing, and this is the one, because even that, I was like, okay, whatever. The second one that really got me, he pulled back up the email that I just referenced and read it back to me. And he said, when you don't post, you're telling women, or anyone, but in this case, it was a woman who wrote, he said, you're telling this woman that ministering to her isn't worth your time.
Yeah. Yeah. She's not prioritized.
Yeah. And I just sat in that for a minute and we just kind of stared at each other. And I wanted to be like, well, no, that's not what I'm doing. Like, she got to understand, like, we're humans too or whatever. And he goes, she doesn't know any of that. She knows that you were producing content that was helping her through a rough season. And then out of nowhere, you just stopped. And she hasn't heard from you in 5 weeks. She hasn't heard something fresh from you in 4 months. And because he's a pretty big online ministry presence as well. And I asked him, I was like, well, I struggle sometimes with, like, it feels selfish to be like, well, I'm going to record myself and tell the world, like, this is what I have to say.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, when you do it that way, it feel like if you're doing it for that reason, then yeah, it's selfish and no one wants to listen to that crap anyway.
Right.
He's like, but when you're doing it because there are people on the other side of the lens who are actively telling you that they're receiving from your ministry, don't try and reach the new person all the ways. If you know that's there, like, minister to them and other people will receive from that as well. I guess if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
And so he was like, don't worry about hitting a certain number of followers or subscribers or getting monetized or any of that. Like, don't worry about any of that. You already have thousands of people every month who are receiving from what you're doing.
Yeah.
Just pour into them.
Right.
And because he pastors a church and they have a huge online presence. And I just asked him, I was like, do you not ever struggle with that? And he was like, dude, when I post our clips online or our sermons online, he said, I almost feel like that's a different person than me because I could never minister physically in person. I could never reach that many people in a single room.
Yeah.
But I can put up something online and 2 or 3 million people be blessed by it. I couldn't bless 2 or 3 million people in person if I tried.
Yeah.
And so he said, I almost feel like it's a different person. And like just hearing that kind of like re-challenged me. Bump all of the stuff about growth or expectations or any of that. To the people who have been a part of our family, I'm sorry that I allowed my pride, my fear, my doubts, my anxieties to stop pouring into people. Because this podcast has changed my life. It's changed my perspective on what God wants to do in my life, what God wants to do in our family, what ministry looks like, what being a Christian looks like, what actually helping each other through life. Because everyone says like, oh, we do life together and we do all these things together, but then we get on Sunday mornings and no one ever talks about anything serious.
Right.
And so we're bringing friends and other people on to talk about serious things. Like I really feel so, not even fulfilled, just like challenged in my spiritual walk with what we're doing.
Yeah.
And I know it's impacting people. And it's crazy that knowing all of that, you can still go,
for sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
but also I need to go. I got to make like an extra $200 a week.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put all this aside and go get this other job so I can make an extra $200 a week instead of like, God, can you just help me?
Yeah.
Can you make a way here if it's doable? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But again, I just felt so convicted by that conversation. So that's what we're going to believe God for. We're just, and I say, I'm sorry. and then I'm going to move on from that because I'm not going to live in my own pity. That's exactly what we're going to do. And I'm asking our podcast family to help hold us accountable to that. I know you talked about now that you're feeling better, like you've always kind of been my bug in my ear. My friend's that way. I've asked him the same, because sometimes you just need people in your life who are going to say, hey, you said you were going to go to the gym with me today. Come to the gym with me today. You said you were going to record an episode this weekend. Even if it's a bad episode, record the episode. Because he's a buddy of mine's a pastor. I was like, well, how do you do this like every single week? And he was like, I gave up on every week's going to be the best sermon I've ever written. He goes, some weeks are just not that good. All right. He doesn't feel like they're that good.
Yeah.
And he's like, but people are expecting to receive, like people are showing up hungry for the word.
Yeah.
They're hungry for advice. They're hungry for testimony. They're hungry for whatever.
Yeah.
I'm going to just give them that instead of I'm only going to preach 2 sermons a year, but they're going to be the most beautiful sermons you've ever. He's like, no one cares about that.
Yeah. I think we talked about that of like consistency. Like people, they thrive in that, like we all do, of like, I was looking up just a second ago of, it takes like, and I'm going to butcher these numbers, but it takes like 3 months to build like a habit, like a good habit or whatever. And it takes like 3 days or something like that to lose a habit.
Yeah.
So it's like consistency and routine and this expectation that people can have for this is very, very important. And I think our just human nature thrives in that a lot, you know. I know that I'm a big podcaster. I listen to, you know, Crime Junkies and all of the like main ones that you can probably even think of. And if they don't post every week, I'm like, what am I guess I'm just gonna ride in silence now, you know, like so it like hurts, you know, it's like almost personal sometimes. So I could totally see that, especially with a more religious podcast of, you know, we look forward to it as on the other side of it, you know.
And I get so much out of making them and editing them and everything else. But I think I say all of that to say, because I'm sure there's going to be people who go like, well, obviously you don't care that much. I think it just goes to show not how little something means to you, but how impactful fear and anxiety really is.
Oh, for sure.
How quickly, especially if you're in a, you know, committed relationship or you're a parent or someone relies on you, then it becomes bigger than yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
And you go, I can't think about anything else other than making sure you guys are okay. And that looks different for everybody.
Yeah.
But for me, being a worrier, me being okay is the next 12 to 24 months are as firm as the concrete we're standing on right now, you know?
Yeah.
And that's just not how God operates. And so to say to our Broomtree family, again, I'm sorry. But secondly, I'd rather go broke doing this and us just totally fall on our face and be like, bro, what was that?
Yeah.
Than to sit back and post in 2 episodes a year and be like, I don't know why God's not, I wish God was doing more in my life.
And it's just like, it's honorable to do that for your family. It's glorified to, you know, survive.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people can relate to that of like, no one is going to sit back and be like, well, you shouldn't make more money, or you shouldn't try to survive, or you shouldn't try to provide for your family. So it's like one of those things that people are like, sometimes you have to say no to the good to accept the great. And not that you're saying no to providing for us, but you're saying no to trying to find all of the answers right now. So that way you can say yes to something that you're actually passionate about doing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And I know we talked about this, I think, in a previous episode, but I'll say it again. How much you love the Lord, but how little you trust the Lord.
Yeah, when it comes down to it.
When it comes to like the raw reality, like I trust God with the spiritual stuff. I trust God to keep my house free of demons.
Yeah.
And, you know, my marriage together or whatever. Yeah. But when it comes to paying my bills, I hardly ever think about the Lord when it comes to paying my bills or paying my taxes or buying groceries. You know what I mean? Like,
I think, and I was thinking about this earlier of like, money is one of those things, like we hear it all the time of like, that's the number one reason for divorce and everything. It's so in your face. It's so factual. It's so like if it doesn't make sense, it just doesn't make sense. Everything else of like the podcast, your marriage, you know, raising a family, all of that is very subjective. And can have a lot of hope and faith in it. And it's so much easier where if the numbers just aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing, like there's really no way of swaying that either way. Like you can say if our marriage is doing bad, like, oh, that might just be my perspective. Oh, it'll get better, like just give it time. Yeah. Money's not that way. Money is like one of the only things that isn't that way. If you're not working, you're not making money. If you're not setting yourself up and you hear all the TikTok clips of like investing and all this other stuff, if you're not doing any of that stuff, it just doesn't come in. And to a certain extent, that is true. But I think also the flip side of that is when you are putting in the work, God's going to bless it more than the numbers make sense. Yeah. If that makes sense.
No, I think you're exactly right, because that's where I was like, because I'm not making money, it must not be blessed. Yeah. Because my fear was telling me you got to go make more money. And so I viewed blessing, but that goes beyond the podcast. That goes to anything in my life. Yeah. If it wasn't making money, I wasn't interested in doing it. Yeah. Or if I even was interested, my corruption was, how can I make this make money? Right. I love doing this other stuff. How can I make money at this thing that I'm doing? Yeah. Instead of being like, God, if I just do what you tell me to do, can I trust that you'll take care of my house? Mm-hmm. Like, will you send me a way where I can pay my bills? Yeah. Because I'm going to work. Like, I'm not afraid. Like, I'm working. Yeah. Yeah. But it's like, God, will you bless the work that I'm doing? And I think we talked about this the other day about like the balance between God bless what I'm doing and God, what should I be doing? Yeah. And I became, God bless what I'm doing, not God, what should I be doing? So I was applying for literally dozens of jobs a week, over 100 jobs in a month. Right. And it's like, God, will you bless me with one of these jobs? Yeah. Instead of like, God, will you bless what I'm doing? Like the amount of time I spent on Indeed, I could have been recording. Yeah. Or praying, or, you know what I mean? Like doing any of those things. And that's what one of the things my buddy told me is he was like, bro, you're spending so much time being stressed and trying to make all this stuff make sense when you could just, what could God have done if you would have been recording for the last 4 months instead of stressing for the last 4 months? And I was like, okay, whatever. Yeah. But I came across this story when me and him were talking, and I shared this with my wife the other day. It's in Exodus 16. It's right after Moses and them crossed the Red Sea, and they just escaped Egypt, and they're already bickering, and they're already complaining about stuff. Yeah. And I immediately felt this story in my spirit when I started thinking about the podcast again. In Exodus 16, I don't know how much of this I'm going to leave in because it's a lot, and I'm a talker. Exodus 16, check this out. It says, the whole community of Israel set out from Elim, sure, and journeyed into the wilderness of Sin. Ooh. I'm going to say Elim, I like it. Between Elim and Mount Sinai, they arrived there on the 15th day of the second month, the day after Valentine's Day. 1 month after, I don't know if that's true or not, but...
I feel like you're just adding a lot of Eric into this already.
Keeps my attention. After leaving the land of Egypt. There, too, the whole community of Israel complained about Moses and Aaron. If only the Lord had killed us back in Egypt, they moaned. There we sat around pots filled with the meat and ate all the bread we wanted, but now you've brought us into the wilderness to starve us all to death. And that's what we do, right?
For sure, yeah.
I hated my job when I was making good money. Mm-hmm. I hated it. Yeah. But then I'm sitting over here now with a job I like, doing a podcast, but I'm a little more tight on money, and I'm like, look at what the Lord has done. Yeah. He has put me in this wilderness to die. Yeah. Then the Lord said to Moses, look, I'm going to rain down food from heaven for you. Each day, the people can go out and pick up as much food as they need for that day. This is the heart of our podcast. We talked about this with the story of Elijah, but I love this with even the story of Moses. They were complaining about God and saying he should have just killed us in Egypt because this sucks. We're so much worse now than we were in Egypt. Yeah. And they were like, in Egypt, we had all the bread we wanted and all the meat we wanted, but now we're out here starving to death. And God goes, look, I'm going to give you food. But like, isn't that so crazy? Yeah. Dude, I wish someone would say that to me of like, I set you free and you're going to turn around and say, you're so much worse. I'll show you worse, Yeah. And God's like, look, I'm going to give you food. But what does he say? I'm going to rain down food from heaven for you. Each day the people can go out and pick up as much food as they need. For that day, I will test them in this to see whether or not they will follow my instructions. He says, I'm going to give them just enough for that day, and it's a test to see whether or not they'll listen to me. On the 6th day, they will gather food, and when they prepare it, there will be twice as much as usual. So for the Sabbath, I won't get into any of that. But I feel like this verse came to my mind when I thought about the season of life we're in right now, where God's like, I'm over here like, oh, there's so much work. My life was so much better when I was making good money.
Right.
And God's like, look,
yeah,
I'm going to give you just enough for this today, or just enough for this mortgage cycle, or just enough for this grocery run, like whatever it is. I'm going to give you just enough for that.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to buy groceries in the fall when my son is older.
Yeah.
And he's like, mm-mm.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you just enough for today. But he said, I'm going to test you in this because, listen to this. Moses and Aaron said to all the people of Israel, by evening you will realize it was the Lord who brought you out of the land of Egypt. They're preaching. In the morning you will see the glory of the Lord because he has heard your complaints. He's kind of like, I
just appreciate the like Pentecostal like reading we're doing right now.
But also he's like, the Lord has heard y'all's complaints, not mine. Yeah. These guys. Which are against him, not against us. Talking about him and Aaron. What have we against him? Or what have we done that you should complain about us? So he's like doubling down on like, I'm not that bad.
Yeah. Which is like what I think we do when we read the story about the Israelites is we're like, we don't ever do this. Yeah. Or like, they're so annoying. And like literally every day it's us.
Yeah, no, we're for sure the people of Israel. But I'm also Moses a little bit because I'm like, what you got about me? Yeah. I didn't do nothing. And that's where he's like, the Lord's heard you complain about him, not about us, because we haven't done anything. I want to make that clear.
That's a younger sibling.
Yeah, well, that's what he says. What have we done that you should complain about us? Then Moses added, the Lord will give you meat to eat in the morning and bread to satisfy you in the morning. For he has heard all your complaints against him. What have we done? Yes, your complaints are against the Lord, not against us. So he's still like doubling down on it. Then Moses turned to Aaron and said, announce this to the entire community of Israel. Present yourselves before the Lord, for he has heard your complaining. Dude, he's like really letting them know. And as Aaron spoke to the whole community of Israel, they looked out towards the wilderness. There they could see the awesome glory of the Lord in the cloud. I don't even know. Like, I couldn't even imagine that, like, they're like, Moses and Aaron are preaching. God's heard you complain, and he's about to blow your minds. And then this cloud pops up in the distance, and they're all like, because these people just saw the Red Sea part. They saw all the plagues, so they know he's not bluffing. Yeah. And they're like, and Moses is like, he's heard your complaints, y'all.
Yeah.
He's heard you're griping. Then the Lord said to Moses, I have heard the Israelites' complaints. Now tell them, in the evening you will have meat to eat, and in the morning you will have the bread you want. Then you will know that I am the Lord your God. That evening, vast numbers of quail flew in and covered the camp, and the next morning the area around the camp was wet with dew. When the dew evaporated, a flaky substance as fine as frost blanketed the ground. The Israelites were puzzled when they saw it. What is it? They asked each other, because they had no idea what it was. And Moses told them, it is the food the Lord has given you to eat. These are the Lord's instructions, because now he's telling them this is how you do it. Each household should gather as much as it needs. Pick up 2 quarts for each person in your tent. Pretty straightforward. Mm-hmm. I'm going to give you enough for today. How much is enough for today? 2 quarts per person. Okay, pretty straightforward. So the people of Israel did as they were told, but some gathered a lot, and some only a little. And when they measured it out, everyone had just enough. Those who gathered a lot had nothing left over, and those who gathered only a little had enough. Each family had just what it needed. But then here's where we get tripped up, and this is me right here. Verse 19. Then Moses told them, do not keep any of it until the morning. God said from the rip, I will give you enough for today. Here's how much you need to go get. and don't try and keep any. Enjoy today. And I think that's the principle of this is one, God will provide, but two, enjoy today. Jesus teaches us that in Matthew where he says, why worry about tomorrow? Tomorrow has enough troubles of its own.
Yeah.
Focus on today. And that's what he's trying to tell them. You
don't even know if you'll have tomorrow.
So, and that's what he's trying to tell them is he's like, I've given you enough for today. And in case you don't know how much it is, it's this much. Yeah. I'm going to save you the headache of even figuring. If you'll go get 2 quarts per person, you'll have everything you need and I will provide it and you won't have to, it's there. But you can't keep any of it. Don't try and stockpile in case I don't show up tomorrow, is what he's saying.
Now, I want to preface that we're not talking about don't ever have savings. Don't ever.
Well, I'm not a huge
I know you're not a big fan of retirements or savings.
But you get what I'm saying, right?
Yes.
He's saying,
I think it's the heart behind it.
Yeah, and it's the fear.
Yeah.
It's the fear of don't spend all day trying to find other stuff to do.
Yeah.
I will give you enough. But he says, don't keep any of it until in the morning. But some of them didn't listen, me, and kept some of it until the morning. But by then, it was full of maggots and had a terrible smell. And Moses was angry with them. That's me. And honestly, that's how I feel sometimes when I look at my life. I feel like it's just sour and it's bad. And these things that I'm trying just aren't working. And it's that's a title. It's just not working.
Yeah.
And I think for them, if I was in this story, I know I'm the Israelite who's stacking up in his pantry where no one's looking. And I'm going back the next morning okay, man, I woke up early, but maybe God didn't wake up early. So now I got to figure something out. I'm going to go, just steal a little extra from yesterday in case he don't show up today. And I open it and it's just gross. Mm-hmm. And my life's a mess and it's chaotic. And I know I would be that guy. I'm that guy right now.
Yeah.
And God has spoken to me and said, I will give you enough for today. Jesus said in Matthew 6, where he's just like, the birds have enough. Look at the flowers. They're taking care. All these things are naturally taken care of. Why would I not take care of you, my child? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, no, that's good. And then he says, don't worry about tomorrow.
Yeah.
Tomorrow's got to, that's the same passage,
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh man, that's so good. And then I get up the next morning and I go to bed that night and I'm like, okay, what do I have from today that I can make last? Because I don't know. He said that today, but he didn't say, I don't know.
Right. Well, I think it just shows how quickly we forget and how important it is to be in the Word every day. It's really hard, to do that. But I think it does change our perspective so much when we do that because we are that way. We need a daily reminder every day that He's going to come through because we were flip-flopped, not even 6 months ago, 7 months ago. Mm-hmm. And I was the one stressing about all of it. Mm-hmm. And I felt like I heard God say, or I was reading in Galatians and I just felt like the thing that stuck out to me was today there is enough. Today there is enough. Today there is enough. And it took 6 months for me to forget, probably even less than that. But it's so easy and just human nature for us to just immediately I need to have control. I need to make it work. God's going to bless my work. Yes. He's going to, why, if I have this free time, why just sit back and have faith? God's just not going to just show up on my couch, which is partly true. But at the same time, we are putting in the work, but still not expecting God to bless it, And
I think part of it, too, is discipline. Reading through this story the rest of the way, after the people gathered the food morning by morning, each family according to its need, and as the sun became hot, the flakes that had not been picked melted and disappeared, so it's gone. On the 6th day, they gathered twice as much as usual, 4 quarts for each person instead of 2. Then all the leaders of the community came and asked Moses for an explanation, and he told them that the Lord had commanded tomorrow will be a complete day of rest, a holy Sabbath, day set apart for the Lord. So bake or boil as much as you want today and set aside what is left for tomorrow. So they put some aside until in the morning, just as Moses commanded. In that morning, the leftover food was wholesome and good and not full of maggots. Moses said, eat this food today, for today is the Sabbath day dedicated to the Lord. There will be no food on the ground today. You may gather the food for 6 days, but on the 7th day is the Sabbath, and there will be no food on the ground. So I think there's a little bit of discipline involved, too. On the 6th day, you're going to get twice as much, because on the 7th day, there's not going to be anything there. And so for us, sometimes what we do is on the 6th day, we go, oh,
yeah,
today's the day, baby. And we go out to eat where we know we shouldn't go out to eat.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, we go buy the car we know we shouldn't buy, or we buy the clothes, or we clear the Amazon cart, or like we hit the Starbucks and up a side, like whatever your thing is that you do, you know, because we're like, oh man, like I got 4 courses instead of 2 courses a day, not knowing that tomorrow or knowing and just thinking like maybe God will like forgive me or make it work out or whatever. Part of it's discipline.
Yeah. And I also think the flip side of that goes back to what I was just saying. I think you have seasons like we did of blessing, like financial blessing in that, like overabundance. And we put a lot of that aside.
Yeah.
And we're using a lot of that now, you know?
Yeah.
And I think like that's just our 6th day. Like that season of our life is the 6th. And now here we are reaping the blessings of that. So that's why I say like savings isn't bad. Putting aside isn't bad. Your seasons are just going to look different.
Yeah. And I love that you said that because it so perfectly fits this next part, because this verse 27, really verse 27 through like 30 is me right now. Cause you literally just said like the financial season we went through was our 6th day, so to speak. Some of the people went out anyway on the 7th day, but they found no food. I'm sorry. That's crazy, dude. Because, like, isn't that right now? Like, isn't that what I just talked about? Like, it's not working.
Yeah.
And I'm out here on the 7th day looking for food, and God's like, what are you doing, bro?
Yeah.
You know? And, like, it's so easy to say that, but, like, dude, when your 7th day feels like it's lasting a long time.
Yeah.
And you start to forget how good the 6th day was and the 5th day was. Like, look at me, bro. I've never missed a meal. Like, come on, you know, I've never had to sleep not in my home. I've never had a car that I couldn't take to work.
Yeah.
My kid's never been in the hospital.
Yeah.
We've never been in the
yeah.
Bro, what are we talking about? But some of them went out on the 7th day anyway, but they found no food. And the Lord said to Moses, how long will these people refuse to obey my commands and instructions? For me, it took about 4.5 months of it not working.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, how long are you going to search around on the 7th day looking like an idiot when I've already given it to you? They must realize that the Sabbath is the Lord's gift to you. This season that you're in is a gift. You know, it's not a punishment. It's not a season of lack because of your lack of stewardship or anything like that.
Right.
Sometimes it can be that.
Yeah.
But when walking in obedience with the Lord, which I feel like we've tried to do, the Lord is like, no, you're just on your 7th day right now. And the 7th day isn't meant to stress about day 1 of next week. That's already taken care of. But your first Sabbath is the first 7th day, a bunch of people still went out looking.
Yeah.
And like, that's me, you know?
Yeah.
And anyway, how long will they have to do this? It's hard to read and cry at the same time. They must realize the Sabbath is the Lord's gift to you. And I said this the other day. I said, how lucky am I that my son's, due in June, and my job right now, I only have to work 3 days a week. How lucky am I? And we have enough to last us at least through the summer to the fall.
Yeah.
How lucky am I that for the first 3 to 4 months of my son's life, I only have to work 3 days a week.
Right. Which is where, like, we've talked about, and we've had the conversation where we sat down and you're like, do I go back to working 50, 60 hours a week so that way we can have that abundance and like live, quote unquote, live our life again, you know? And I remember looking at you and being like, we weren't living during that time.
Yeah.
Although, yes, we weren't stressed about money. I was super depressed. I was raising a baby by myself, basically. You were watching her grow up through videos at work, you know? And I remember I was getting my nails done, my lashes done, spray tans, my hair done. And like, we had all this, and I was like, I feel like I don't even know who I am in this moment, you know? Like, we have all of this stuff. We have this abundance, and I've never been sadder.
Yeah.
And I've never missed you more. And you've never missed our family more.
Yeah.
And to say that that was like the most glorious time of our life,
yeah, it's crazy.
Is like the grass is always greener, right? Because we're out of it, it seems like that would be the better option. But looking back and like remembering it from that perspective, 1000%, I would go on food stamps.
Yeah.
So that way you could watch our kid actually grow up.
Yeah. Well, most people wouldn't know this. I don't mind sharing this now. We got to a point in our life where we had put our house up for sale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We had put our house up for sale. We had put both of our cars up for sale. We were willing to, we'd even talked about maybe having moved back in with my parents.
Right.
For a season to like pursue this dream.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I put the for sale sign out. I applied for almost 300 jobs.
No one wanted the cars.
No hits on the cars or anything. And then I put the for sale sign in the yard, which was like the last big thing for it. That was really hard to do.
I went through multiple sessions of therapy this is my house. Like this is, I love this home.
The day within a week of putting this sale sign in the yard, maybe 2 weeks, I got the job that I have now and I love it. And I think most days I love it.
Yeah.
But I think it took the willingness to say like, all right, man, the yards, like
we had
the
to do
signs
some
in
action,
the yard.
I felt like,
to show God, like, I really do want this more than anything.
Yeah.
And God was like, okay, I'm going to bless you with this job so you don't have to move. But this job isn't going to be the job you had before where you had more than you knew what to do with. This job is going to be every morning you go out. And I know you're used to getting as many quarts as you can carry.
Right.
But I need you to go out and just get enough for what you need.
Yeah.
And trust that I'll be there in the morning.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, God. But I had this well for so long that I could go to whenever I wanted. And the Lord's like, yeah, but not now. That's not what you wanted.
Yeah.
And that's not what I want for you.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I'm almost done reading. It's the Bible. I mean, you guys aren't a Christian podcast. You're just going to have to deal.
And Eric, he's a preacher.
Sorry, I love the Bible. Okay. Sue me. How long will these people refuse to obey my commands and instructions? They must realize that the Sabbath is the Lord's gift. That's why he gives you 2 days supply on the 6th day. So there'll be plenty for the 2 days. On the Sabbath day, you must stay in your place. Do not go out and pick food on the seventh day. So the people did not gather any food on the 7th day, and the Israelites called the food manna. It was like a white something seed, coriander, and it tasted like honey wafers. I like to think that it's like banana pudding almost, you know?
Yeah. I doubt it.
It definitely don't taste like those damn communion chips.
No.
Good
Lord.
Those
are just styrofoam.
Yeah, dude, it's like eating a notebook paper. Then Moses said, this is what the Lord has commanded. Fill 2 quarts with manna to preserve it for your descendants. And that ultimately goes inside the Ark of the Covenant to remember God's faithfulness. And that's what they do. And then check this out. Are you ready for it?
Yeah, I'm still ready.
Easier. They put it in the Ark of the Covenant. And so the people ate. Okay, yeah, here it is. He eventually placed it in the Ark of the Covenant in front of the stone tablets inscribed with the terms of the covenant. Verse 35, and then I'm done. If you want to come play keys, that'd be great. I'm going to edit in keys right there. That's really good.
It's so accurate.
Verse 35. So the people of Israel ate manna. You ready for this? For 40 years until they arrived at the land where they would settle. And they ate manna until they came to the border of the land of Canaan.
Gosh. Do we have to live like this for 40 years?
40 years, bro. 40 years. And I'm worried about, like, what I'm going to do this fall, how I'm going to pay for groceries in the fall with this economy and everything else crazy going on. And it's just like, God's like, what are you talking about? And we that's why we have the scriptures.
Right.
To remind us, like, God literally put breadcrumbs on the grass every morning for 40 years and meat too.
Yeah.
Like they had enough. And when they tried to gather too much, they made themselves exhausted and looked foolish.
Yeah.
But when they just did what the Lord said, and what the Lord told me was, love my wife, raise my kids, and do this podcast.
Right.
And I love my wife, I raise my kids, and I try and make money anywhere else I can.
Yeah.
And that's what I've been doing for the last 4.5 months.
Yeah.
And like I said from the very beginning, it's just not working. 2 things I wanted to take from this episode. First, again, I'm sorry. To our Broom Tree family, I'm going to own that and say, I allowed my fear and stuff to get the best of me. And I'm not going to do that anymore. And I'm just going to trust the Lord. I'm going to try to trust the Lord to do what he's going to provide my manna if I just do what he says to do. And I'm not going to try and live in abundance and take more than I need. And I'm not going to try and stockpile for tomorrow in case he bails on me, but I'm just going to try and stay consistent with what he's told me to do. And that's to love you, raise our kids, and do this podcast. Like I said earlier, just in the last 4 weeks, over 100,000 people in the last 28 days. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And so to people who are part of our Broom Tree family, I'm glad that you guys have stuck around for us. And we're doing this thing together. We've said from day one, we're always just going to be upfront about where we're at. We're having a little boy.
Yeah.
And
no, we do not have a name yet.
No. So drop your names in the comments below.
Yeah.
No, please.
Your guesses of what his name will be.
I'll tell you this. It's not a biblical name. I pitched a biblical name, and my sinful wife spit on it and said absolutely not.
We haven't even decided what we're doing yet. Like wholeheartedly anyways. I say we're just going to pop them out and then decide.
Yeah, right there in the delivery room when we got everything else going on.
I think that happens all the time. You hold your baby and then you realize.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I remember what I thought the first time I held Joe, and it wasn't, oh, this is Joanna Faye, the most beautiful gift God ever gave me. I was like, oh my God, what is this alien?
What is she covered in?
Why does she smell like that? What is all this? And then I remember I had to work that day, so I was so tired.
I know. We talk about.
I was up for like 20 hours.
Your labor pains.
We'll do an episode on that one day, fellas. The labor of fatherhood or something like that is what we'll call it. That's so lame. Anyway, but no, I own that. I want to chase this dream. I want to chase it with you guys. And I hope that whoever is listening to this, whatever that thing is for you, that you've allowed fear, anxiety, depression, fear of failure, fear of recommitment, whatever that is, just like my friend did with me. I hope you realize, one, that you're good at it. You're called to it if you've really put it under the leadership of the Holy Spirit and said, like, God, this is what I believe you have for me. I think what I've been really bad about is, God, this is what I'm doing. Will you bless it? Instead of, God, tell me what to do. Because if you'll just do what God told you to do, you don't have to ask him to bless it. You know?
That's so good.
It's literally what he told you to do. And so for me, this is what God told me to do. So whatever that thing is that God told you to do, quit asking him to bless this other thing and ask him to give you the courage, the discipline, the whatever it is you need to step into that. And just like my friend did with me, I hope that this episode encourages you, that it challenges you, that it helps maybe bring relatability. If you've, like I said, mine's been 4 months. You could be in that for 4 years. You could be in that for 40 years for some of our older tree huggers. That's cool. But at some point we can walk away from it and we can step back in, just like the heart of our podcast with the story of Elijah. At some point you can step back into it and you're still qualified. You're still called to do it. God just wants you to do it, and trust that he's going to provide. As long as you do what he tells you to do, when he tells you to do it, no more, no less. And he's going to walk with you through that. And that's what I've seen even over the last 4.5 months of stressing. Every report we've gotten of our baby has been perfect. Mm-hmm. Everything with Joe has been amazing. Mm-hmm. Our house, like the studio's great. It's blossoming. Our podcast has almost doubled in size, and I haven't even posted him anything. Like, what is God doing?
Yeah.
You know, and I'm sitting over here going, oh, I don't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like I do with my friends, sometimes you just need to talk to someone and let the Holy Spirit use them to be like, look at what God's doing. Because sometimes you can miss the forest for the trees, you know? Mm-hmm.
I mean, a lot of it is perspective. I know it's hard to see in the moment and everything. I think one thing that I always find funny about our relationship is we always flip-flop. We're always the opposite of the other one. So when you're stressed, I'm cool as a cucumber and vice versa. So in this time, I think most of it is I've been distracted by.
You've been growing a baby.
Yeah,
it's a lot of work.
And it's not been easy this time around.
Yeah.
And it's not even the pregnancy because he's healthy, he's doing good and everything. It's all outside, like flus and a toddler. And
it's been
everything
rough.
else that has, been consistent in this pregnancy. But what I've loved is I like the relationship that we have and why I think we need like-minded people in our life, whether that's a spouse or friends or whatever it is, because it does keep us grounded because it's so easy to do in our life when you find out I'm pregnant and then you just start to spiral and then everything's negative. Everything is bad. Yeah. The house isn't the perfect house anymore. The cars aren't working as good as they used to. The sky isn't as blue as it used to be, And I'm over here on the other side once I'm not dying. And I'm like, I love everything about our life right now. I love our daughter. Like, and even in her tantrums, I think she's the most precious thing ever. And, I love this house. I love our cars. I love my job. I love your job,
Yeah.
And it's good and bad of like, I can kind of remind you, but also it's hard to relate in those times too. I'm like, what are you stressed about? Because like, it wasn't even 4 months ago that I was like, how are we going to make it over the summer? And you're like, Amanda, I don't even know why are you even worried about the summertime? Yeah. Like, that's so far away. And then you find out I'm pregnant and you're like, why are you not more worried about the summer?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, you told me not to worry. So now I'm not worried,
Yeah.
So I think that's why it's, like I said, good to keep reminders of the word. That's like not to be cliche, but it's why
it's there.
Yeah. It's why it says it. It's why you feel different when you do it. And also to keep those people in your life that encourage over just hearing you out. I think a lot of times we put people in our lives that are just going to tell us that we're not crazy, which is okay.
Yeah.
But we don't keep people in our lives that push us, and grow us and maybe slap us across the face every once in a while and say, why are you spiraling? Your life is beautiful, Yeah. Your podcast is blessed. Just go do it,
Yeah.
Because it's hard to hear sometimes, but it keeps us grounded and changes our perspective, because life is a lot of perspective.
Yeah.
When you really take a step back and look at it.
Yeah. No, I like that. I always like your closing thought.
Oh.
Do you remember, this is sidebar, you probably never watched the Jerry Springer Show.
No.
Jerry Springer Show was a beautiful
It raised
mess.
you, I know it did.
It did. It really did. That Cops and the OG Ninja Warrior that was in full Japanese, I didn't understand.
I watched Friends.
Yeah. But no, Jerry Springer, this show was absolute chaos. And at the end, they would always go to a final commercial break and they would come back and it was like a 2-minute, 3-minute clip. And it was always Jerry sitting on the stage looking straight at the camera. And he had the most like calm and it was like, I think it was like final thought was with Jerry or something like that. And he would be like, I hope today's episode is shown you that love can come in all different forms and all different styles. And what's important to remember is family comes first. And like whatever. And then his closing line, it was always, take care of yourself and each other. Good night. And then it would pan out and everyone would go crazier. And I remember thinking like, we just watched these two incest broads fist fight, over some trailer park drug dealer.
Why are you like giving me this inspirational quote?
And I remember being like 10 years old watching it like, take care of yourself and each other. You got it, Jerry. I'll see you tomorrow at 2. You know what I mean? Like it's just, and the next week he was like, today we have a man in love with a horse. And you're like, okay. Anyway, when you did that.
I'm glad I reminded you.
Yeah, when you did that's immediately what I thought about was like, take care of yourself and each other. But no, thank you guys for listening. Thank you for being a part of our family. Not just our online family, but thank you for reaching out, for those of you who have, for your comments, for your DMs, for your emails. They're so inspiring and encouraging to us to keep pressing in when it's easy to get down about what you're doing. And I hope that whoever's listening to this, that you feel encouraged, that you feel like you're not alone in that feeling of wanting to quit or being burned out or whatever it is, but also that you are called to do more, and you're equipped to do it, and God wants to bless you to do it, and you're good at it. I don't know what that thing is, but I know I struggle with that sometimes. And I want to tell you, you're good at if you're doing what God's called you to do, you're good at it. Even if no one's told you that. And so I'm grateful that you guys are a part of our family. We love you guys. We pray for you guys. And yeah, if you haven't already, follow, subscribe, comment, let us know, who you are, where you're watching from, what this ministry means to you. And we're going to do our best to hold ourselves accountable, to stay faithful to recording and producing and creating ministry that or content that ministers to people in a real and authentic way, even if that's us in our t-shirts on the back porch while our kids asleep talking about how hard life is.
Yeah.
I think that's what the Holy Spirit's asked us to do, so that's what we're going to do. Yeah. But we love you guys. We're honored that you guys are a part. And again, what God is doing with this podcast right now is crazy. And that's because of you guys, because of liking, sharing, subscribing, following, all of those things. So continue to do that. We love your support. But we just pray that this blesses you, and that you feel encouraged and inspired to do what God's called you to do. And we love you, and we'll see you guys next episode. Peace. Do you want to intro us, or you want me to intro you?
I would rather you intro. I don't want to intro ever.
Okay, I got you. But I'm saying, keep an eye on these wasps.
Yeah, y'all leave us alone.
Bees leave you alone. Wasps.
What kind of assholes?
I think they're getting paid to do it. I don't know who's paying them, but they're getting commissioned off of this.
Okay, go ahead and pray.
He landed on your head just now. I don't know if you felt that or not. Well, welcome back to another episode of the Broom. I don't like that. Ugh, that was icky. You good?
Yeah.
Can you contain yourself, please?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Sir laughs a lot, and you're not doing it.
I'm laughing at you the way you ended it. Of like, that was icky.
Yeah, I didn't like it. It felt too like pop star-ish, you know. I want you to smash the subscribe button. All right.
You are freaked out by this guy, aren't you?
Dude, well, because he's gonna sting me and kill me.
Might want to wait for this plane.
Jesus, a freaking military flyovers out here, dude. I'm confident he's gonna do it while yeah, he's over here like doing God knows what.
Joe loves it though.
Mm-hmm. And there is a wasp. I'm sorry. There's a dude, bro. Not a chance. Not in Jesus' name. Absolutely not.
Goodness. He's friendly.
Friendly?
I mean,
get out of here,
not
dude.
Scared.
Don't kiss up to him. He's still gonna sting you. Sorry, guys. That might happen a few more times. I don't even know what that was now. Now I'm twitching out a little bit, man. Well, welcome back to another episode of the Broom Tree Podcast. My name is Eric. I have my lovely wife, Amanda, here with me today. And okay, I'm sorry. It's on the pillow.
It's okay.
It's literally on your shoulder.
He's not. He left.
He's right behind that pillow. He's within 6 inches of your skin. See what I'm saying? Do I need to get the fly swatter?
No, I'm fine.
Okay. Last time. Here we go. If you get stung, you get stung. All right. I will test them in this. Do you see this wasp? Mm-hmm. I will test them in this to see whether or not they will. Bro, this is a test.
He just wants to read the word. Absolutely not.
Wasps don't go to heaven.
I really hope not.
Dude, wouldn't that suck?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm almost done reading. It's the Bible. I mean, you guys are on a Christian podcast. You're just going to have to deal.
And Eric, he's a preacher.
Sorry, I love the Bible. Okay? Sue me.
You say that as you're reading it, but
on the
getting you to read it on other days.
We're going to cut that out. Dude, wasp, not today. Nope. All right.
He's just making sure it's still recording.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
What's that guy called that makes sure
the producer?
Yeah.
Yeah. This episode is brought to you by Wasp. Dude, he's like, I can't.
I feel like he knows you fear him because
he could probably sense it.
Yeah.
Stupid animal. Why there were two of them on the boat?
What? Do you?
On the boat.
And they could just fly around. I don't think they.
A wasp flew for 40 days in the pouring rain. 0% chance.
Okay, we don't have.
You know who was the happiest in the flood? Whales.
Yeah.
They saw parts of the world that they haven't seen since.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like, think about that. If the flood was today and you could, a whale could swim through New York City, they would be like, oh my gosh, guys.
This is nice.
This is what you guys do all day? This is amazing. Anyway,